Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. OpTic Texas made history today, becoming the first ever team to win a major and come dead last in the next set of qualifiers. They will go into Major 4 in Burbank as the 12th seed with not a favourable situation, but there is still some confidence in the OpTic camp. Things could turn around. Dashy responds, Kenny responds, implying that maybe Lamb will be a different story after all. The better performance today against Toronto Ultra was nothing exactly spectacular. Very much into your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Going into today, OpTic haven't lost 6 in a row for 10 years, and today that became a possibility, of course, after winning their first series back against Miami online, and then since then, things have rather fallen apart. We'll see the full details of that in a second, but if we look at the map set today against Ultra, there were some positives here potentially to take for OpTic. The problem, of course, was that, you know, the 6-star Search and Destroy has actually been, well, it's been up and down. The 6-star Hardpoint's been good for OpTic. The sub-base Hardpoint has been really good for OpTic, of course. Famously, they beat Toronto on that map in the grand finals, right, map 1, and Ultra decided to play them on it again just because Ultra really likes sub-base as well. But the situation is that Toronto today were playing a different OpTic team than they'd played a few weeks ago. Not in terms of the players on the team, but just in the actual recent performance. High-rise Control, that's a good map for Toronto. Karachi Hardpoint, you know, Invasion, Search and Destroy, which always can be a banger between these two. But look at the map set, you think, well, you know, if it was the OpTic from the major, you'd look at this and you think, all right, well, yeah, it could be a Game 5 on the cards. Today's OpTic doesn't quite seem to be the case, and genuinely the start of Game 1, this was very reminiscent in some ways of when they played Vegas, right? You guys probably remember, they hadn't lost a sub-base all season, OpTic. They beaten everyone on it, you know, FaZe, Ultra, whoever plays them on it, they were taking down. They then played Vegas on it and got beaten for the first time all year online in that match a couple of weeks ago, and the feeling was, well, you know, they were going to eventually lose one. Obviously, Vegas weren't exactly on fire at that point, looking especially good, but then they turned up over the next couple of weeks, and it was like, okay, maybe there was some, you know, server cheese going on or whatever. OpTic just felt like they were gonna, you know where they lost to Vegas. But there were some reminiscent signs here, right? Like the game started off and immediately Ultra went up like 80-0 effectively on OpTic. Okay, sure, OpTic did make a bit of a comeback, but it never felt especially close. I think that was the concerning thing for OpTic really this series, is that it never really felt like there was much tension in the air. Like you'd expect the rematch of the Major 3 Grand Finals in Toronto to feel like, wow, this is going to be interesting, right? Who's going to win? Is it going to be the second place in the most recent event? Is it going to be the first place? But it never really got going in the sense that there was never so much jeopardy, because it always felt like Ultra had the upper hand, and Scrappy at this point was 25-11. Today, Kenny had a really rough series, and I think that's going to be the key talking point coming away from today, because yesterday, all the talk was, and for understandable reasons, about Pred. The play style, is it working with Shotzzy, all these other concerns. But the fact of the matter is that Kenny, while he does a lot for the team, clearly outside of the game, and even in the game as well, should not be underestimated. His performance on LAN was impeccable, but, you know, there is a trend of Kenny being on teams that aren't so good online. Now, OpTic were good online until this stage, so I don't really buy that idea. But, you know, it was also true that Los Angeles Thieves, you know, they won last year, then they went on this, like, horrible online streak after that. And, you know, Kenny has been a part of situations like that before, but, you know, he also knows how to win. Like, he's, tied for the most championships in the CDL era for a very good reason, right? So I don't think his underperformance today is grounds like, oh, Kenny's got to go. I think it's very understandable that a few weeks ago, we were talking about and singing Kenny's praises, and for very good reason, given clearly what he has brought to this team. And they won a championship like a month ago, right? Which is the craziest thing about all of this. But it's not just about Kenny, it's not just about Dashy. I really think from top to bottom, the team has underperformed substantially this stage, and we'll see some numbers that back that up in a second. But yeah, Ultra win the game 1. As I say, it wasn't really that close. OpTic put up a bit of a fight at the end, but it was always obvious that Ultra were going to close this one out. And yeah, in the end, it was 250 to 175 or something. We actually saw at the end of this one, and well, I'll just show you guys here, we got some body shots were coming through from Scrappy. I think he was putting a couple of bullets down range, and then he shoots a few more bodies at the end of the game. Of course, this was meant to be, on paper, the series where Scrappy and Toronto had the opportunity to force OpTic into the loser's bracket, right? Because there was OpTic on the cusp of making it or not making it. There was, you know, obviously they had to play Boston, right? The theory goes, OpTic should have beaten Boston, and then this was the series to make winners or to not make winners. So Scrappy always potentially had that chance. But now he had the chance, and the team had the chance to put OpTic in the dust and effectively relegate them to being the lowest seed for the major, and Scrappy kind of did exactly that. And also, you've always got to wonder with the whole Scrappy thing, given the OpTic Scrappy rumours that have been going around, Is there anything in that? And whenever a player plays against a team that they've been linked to, there's always a bit more of like, look, you see the numbers I just dropped on these guys, they need me type thing. But I don't even feel like Scrappy thinks that way, because if you're Scrappy as well, you know, are you looking at OpTic thinking, damn, like, I really want to go to OpTic right now because they seem to be a bit of a mess, do they not? And it might even take a bit of convincing for a guy like Scrappy or a guy like HyDra, even if they were completely unrestricted free agents, to go to OpTic right now, given that they seem to be cursed or something. I just don't really know. But every 2 years, they win an event, and then something happens, and it doesn't go to their favor going forwards. This was another one when Insight had a 1 versus 2. We've seen good clutches from Insight in his career. Obviously, this is what he does. Find him in a 1 versus 1 in hardpoint. It's going to be tough to beat him, search and destroy, obviously. But, you know, the same rule applies. This time he's in a 1 versus 2. They chow, they die, and eventually they lose the game. And it's another, I mean, this was a rounds that really kind of blew my mind, really. So OpTic are here. They're on the attack. They got a first blood. CleanX got team naded, so he's out of there. 4 versus 3. Yes, Ultra are stacking over towards A, but Dashy, who's this arrow here, he jumps out of the window and comes up with the boys. Like, they decide to 4-hit this, and it's just not a great play, because Scrappy then just jumps up and shoots a couple of guys in the back, basically. They basically got themselves pinched here, right? Like, Scrappy was in position to try and jump up behind them, and by Dashy just kind of running through, I don't really know what the comms were at this point. I guess they just said, all right, we've got a first blood, let's just hit it out. And they did, but they basically put themselves in a position to get pinched, and eventually they lose the round. So just moments like that make you think, you know, it goes to a 1v1 in the end. Shotzzy in a 1 versus 1. Insight hits some kind of ridiculous shots here, actually, to get the win. I mean, he got a headshot multiplier there, it looks like to me. But the game is the same for everybody. Ultra have obviously stepped up, so have FaZe in recent times, and, you know, another 6-2 win. This puts OpTic, by the way, you wouldn't even believe this if I told you this a few weeks ago, on 10 search and destroy losses in a row. The record is 13 from Boston, right? Who said that recently? I'm pretty sure that's got to be the record, right? So OpTic have now lost 10 searches in a row after, like, winning the major, beating Miami. Since then, they've lost literally every single search and destroy. Like, they're not far off breaking the record there, which is just so absurd to think about. And it's obviously possible, right? They go to the major. Definitely possible they break it this season. And, like, I don't think they will. Surely they're going to win 1. But on this evidence, it's tough to really point at it. And even Tupac, he decides to come out and do some trolling. Of course, this guy, search and destroy coach, analyst for FaZe, he got in that beef with Pred the other day when they had the 8. I think it was the start of June, wasn't it? They were playing some search and destroy 8. They were beefing a little bit. And, you know, Pred basically said this guy's terrible because he dropped a donut. Then Tupac kind of bounced back. Pred then fired back at him. Bit of drama. You guys know how it is. And as Tupac says, I will consider dropping the curse I put on OpTic search and destroy for Pred's actions from that fateful night of SD8. If the green wall gets me over 100 or over 1,000 subs, stream will be later, he says. So yeah, Tupac taking responsibility and effectively trying to rub salt in the wounds of this OpTic gaming downfall. But look, as Study says, the fall-off needs to be studied. Like, I don't really think I've ever quite seen anything like this. And, well, we literally haven't, because it's never happened before that a team has won a major and come dead last. Even Los Angeles Guerrillas, the team that won the Fluke Major, whatever you want to say, back in Minnesota, Major 2, 2022 in Vanguard, the Vulcaning, when Spark came in and used the Volk. You guys know the drill. Even they were not top 12 the next major. Teams have gone from winning to starting in losers, but teams have never gone from winning to being dead last in the next set of qualifiers, which is what happens here, because even though Boston are bad, terrible in fact, they beat OpTic and therefore they win the tiebreaker. This game though, OpTic showed some signs. I mean, there was a round in here that they dominated Toronto on. They won the offense with like 19 lives to spare. It was impressive, but actually when it mattered, the final rounds, couple of plays didn't go their way, and all of a sudden they're losing a round 5, they're wasting streaks, you know, they're taking it to a round 5, they're getting spawn trapped. Like, it's just a disaster really. And while they show some signs and some promising opportunities in there, Dashy's on a 10 spree, it's like you've got to close out that game in that moment, but it's not what happens. So OpTic go into Major 4 as the dead last seed. They won Major 3, here they are, just, you know, a month or so ago, and now they are the 12th seed going into the Major, and of course they're getting clowned on here from multiple angles, but it's really on the OpTic guys to decide, okay, they know that they are the same team, literally the same team that was the best team in the world on that Sunday a few weeks ago. They're still in there somewhere. Yes, the game is slightly different now, but they can still access that if they get in the right spot, if their practice becomes better. And I think, honestly, from a mentality perspective, that is the concern right about now. We've been getting stuff like this. Boston, you can take off your OpTic mask now, because these two teams have not been playing the best COD over the last few weeks. And as Kenny says, GG's Toronto, see you guys at the tourney. So no more, I don't know if Hex had a word, right? Because we saw earlier today, Hex was maybe not not so happy about the words that Kenny said on Twitter after the fact, saying effectively, the team talks weren't going so well. We talk about stuff doesn't get executed in the server. But Kenny then replies and says, yeah, I'm faded. I forgot there's no fans even there. So yeah, even like the fan lift that OpTic could have had, right? The energy in the crowd. If you think that's an advantage for OpTic, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe it adds pressure. There's always a debate on that. Maybe it helps them in some respects having none of that environment, but it's like that's the same environment they get online effectively, but it's just in a LAN environment. And often you'll see at these tourneys with no fans, those are kind of the tournaments where the teams that maybe struggle on LAN a bit more, usually they can do a bit better. So I'm not really sure it does play into OpTic's favor, to be honest, this particular setup. There was this though from Aches, can you believe it? Aches actually giving some positivity here to the green wall. He goes, may remember if you followed the scene since back in 2018 when Evil Geniuses lost 12 straight search and destroys. Bevels kind of really came on board at that point and started working with them in their search and destroy strats. They then won the world championship with some great search and destroy stuff from then to the end of the season. So Aches is saying actually don't lose hope, it can be done. Obviously he's more gassing himself up than really, giving any kind of credit to the OpTic fans, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And as Scrappy says, super proud of how we finished the stage, because fair play to Toronto, they were looking not sketchy online, but they didn't necessarily have the momentum they would have wanted coming back from their own major. They've now really ramped that up again, right? Beating FaZe, beating OpTic, that's an impressive couple of wins. Well, it would be if OpTic weren't quite as they were, but as Dashy says, GG's Boston Toronto, terrible online split from us. Despite all those matches, I'm still confident in the boys to make a run on LAN next week. Appreciate the support. We're going to have these talks over the coming days. What is an acceptable run for OpTic? How far do they need to go for that to be deemed acceptable and give them the required momentum going into the World Championship? Dashy still reckons it's in there somewhere, and maybe it is. But the reality is that it's been 10 years since they've lost 6 maps in a row, or 6 series in a row, and that was when they went on this spree, which, well, it wasn't the best, was it? So, yeah, maybe they'll get to the streak, maybe they won't, but seems rather unlikely. These were the numbers as well. Pred actually 1.2 today with lots of damage. So that's the thing. It's clearly not just a one-player issue here. Kenny today had a 0.64, which is ugly. Obviously, he knows he didn't play so well, and Ultra played pretty good from top to bottom. But yeah, just so many problems and just no time effectively to resolve them. Let's talk about this as well, though. Ravens versus Boston Breach. Mega important series, especially for Ravens. Boston, they're out of it anyway. They're in losers. They're not making the World Championship. Who cares? Technically, they can still make it if they win Major 4. Actually, no, they probably can't anymore. They could have made it if they won today on Major 4, but of course, that's now off the table. But fair play to TJ Halley, like what a player this guy is turning into this season. There was even talk on the timeline, I saw, wow, OpTic need TJ back or something, which is not a sentence that I thought I would be uttering 12 months ago. But here we are, where TJ's been kind of frying for Carolina lately. And honestly, over Game 1 and Game 2, they just crush Breach. And again, this is a Boston team that pretty much destroyed OpTic on this map yesterday. And Ravens just come in and just put them down with effectively no fight at all. So, that's the interesting one to me. Ravens take a 2-0 lead. They 6-1 them. I mean, the Ravens are good at this map, obviously. Like, they've proven that multiple times. But the fact that Boston, dominated OpTic here and then just get destroyed the next day, definitely some questions. Boston, though, bounce back in the control. They win this one, and they will think they probably should have won the Game 4. Similar circumstances, that crazy Boston versus OpTic comeback just yesterday. But this time, Ravens do enough to close it out, actually. It was a really close-fought affair. Clayster made a big 3-piece towards the end of the game. They get the win. And then Clay was talking trash after the fact. Here he was actually saying, Beans has been chirping in lobbies all year long. This guy just can't shoot against me. And it's a good bit of beef between the pair of them. And even Beans, another bit of beef, you've got to say. Unfortunately, the beef is at the end of the season now. We've seen Beans versus Gunless now for well over a year, and it's pretty low-tier beef. It ain't Scrap and Drazah, but it's up there, Beans and Gunless. You always got to wonder when they're playing each other what sort of trash talk you're going to see. Now we got another one, it seems. Clayster versus Beans. The issue is, I don't think Ravens and Boston are going to be doing much playing against each other from now to the end of the season. Neither team may make the World Championship. One of them most certainly isn't. But a massive 10 points a day for Ravens. This was such a must-win series. They close out in 4. If they got reverse swept by Boston to close out their online run, it would have been just so bad. But, would Boston really have won a Game 5? Probably not against a team that wasn't OpTic. But yeah, Bean says chirping. This go waffles in game chat, and now I bite back, and apparently that's a problem now. So yeah, good bit of beat between the pair of them. These were the numbers though overall. Clay with a monster series to get them over the line. Priestahh had a really rough game. I think it was the game 4 actually. He went basically double negative. I think it was 16 and 31. So, you know, after a good series yesterday, Priestahh can't keep that up. So, you know, but we know Boston are blowing it up anyway. The real talking point here was the fact that Ravens got the 10 points they needed and at least gave themselves a good chance to make it to the winners bracket. But Royal Ravens needed Los Angeles Thieves to lose here as they were favoured to do against the New York Subliners if they wanted to make the winners bracket in class. But no, this was a remarkable series. What a way to close out the online stage. It's got to be said, because all the online games this season, this is the one to close out with. There was so much importance on the line here as well, right? Because New York Subliners, they needed to win this to secure themselves a better seed. By losing, they have a very tricky first round game, as we shall talk about tomorrow when we do the full breakdown of the bracket. But the worst thing is for the Subliners, they go up 2-0 in this series. They had everything in their favour. They win the game 1 emphatically. They close out the game 2. They then, you know, 6-3 on the invasion search. Pretty comfortable. Looks like, okay, Thieves are again not going to beat a team that's in the top 4 this season. But all of a sudden, Ghosty making some plays. They end up winning the control. And this was the big game ready here on the sub base, where again, Thieves just about get over the line. Take it to a game 5, a HyDra search and destroy, where Subliners officially get reverse swept. You know, online has been crazy this season. It continues in force here. Thieves with such a massive win, not just for the qualification and their seeding for the tournament itself at Major 4. They already had 3 wins going into this, but another 10 points is just so big with their World Championship aspirations on the line when they get to Major 4 in LA. To be fair, no fans, but, you know, it is technically a home major if you want to look at it from that perspective. Same with the Gorillas, but, you know, they aren't as good as Thieves, at least theoretically, and in terms of the standings. And here we go. Subliners go down. They were down 4-1. Thieves close it out 6-4. Just so big for them. Honestly, we've talked about Thieves all season, not having the ice, struggling when it comes to those situations. But in this moment, they ice up when it matters. 3 in a row. And they actually put Subliners, despite the winners bracket start, in a really tricky spot. So as a result of this absolute madness, Ravens are going to start in the losers bracket. Thieves are going to start in the winners bracket, playing, I think, Miami. And Subliners are going to play FaZe round 1. Yes, you heard that correctly. We'll talk about the bracket and all the detail in tomorrow's video. Very much intrigued to your thoughts and all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.